Hey everyone, Angelo here, homeless filmmaker in LA. Been living in my car for a year, 6 months in LA, 6 months in Virginia before that, and I'm in my Toyota Camry. I finally got the LED bulb up here, nice and bright, instead of that old incandescent one. I was thinking about what's it like to lose everything you believe in. You know, I'm interested in that stuff, you know, drama. And when people are disillusioned and, you know, what they really think. I like hearing that stuff. I don't like hearing the everyday people are hypnotized by the world. I like hearing, you know, the dark stuff, the things that are really compelling and that, you know, people really think that shapes their world. That's what interests me. And if I start hearing fake stuff, I just tune out. You see me like my tongue's hanging out, my eyes are glazed over. Losing what you believe in. By that I mean like losing everything, you know, you thought the world would be. So growing up, that was everything. It's like my identity, the religious beliefs and I've talked about this, I thought I held, but really I always, like, you know, tried to be a Christian in a way, but I could never really believe in it. Moisturizer. Political beliefs, certainly, those all changed drastically too. And those changed along with the religious stuff because, like, I tried to hold on to a lot of those beliefs and kind of out of fear and insecurity, fearing that I'd be a bad person if my beliefs changed. Anyways, so I've talked a lot about, you know, how I fell away from religion. There was another video about that recently, just how excruciating it was to where I felt like I had to abandon Christianity in order to survive. So I talked about all that stuff. I'm not going to go through all that again. You can watch that video if you want, called How Scary Was It to Leave Christianity? And all the mental illness that ensued from that, and not ensued from that, that was a factor in that, because I was having horrible mental illness and no treatment whatsoever. And I was led to believe, oh, God can deal with that, and Christianity and whatever. Like, it's nothing. It's always totally illusory. You're always reaching somewhere, and you need to reach somewhere else. And it's just like being, you know, spinning out of orbit with no features, no landmarks. And that was my life in general for a long time. You know, I never really, when I was younger, held out hope of anything. I always had this sort of, you know, like, harbored this idea that, like, well, what if Buddhism's true? Or what if Hinduism is true or something? You know, I see people, you know, documentary footage from people in those religions, and they seem pretty devout. I'm like, well, if, you know, that's what we're sort of measuring ourselves by, the devoutness of others. Oh, they always talk about, you know, how you should look up to other church figures and all that nonsense. I thought, well, they're even, like, more devoted and seemingly, like, you know, to the exclusion of everything else. And it's a lot more interesting, and I found the art a lot more compelling. I could never be Buddhist or Hindu or anything. I can't be in any group. There was always this idea when I was young, like I would see movies, always this idea of fate being this somewhere, this orb somewhere you reach out to and eventually you'll find it. And then, you know, after a time thinking, oh, I don't have one. It's just never going to happen. So, you know, okay, again, I talked about so much of that stuff, you know, went through it in other videos, but to get onto the topic of this video, what's it actually like to lose your belief in so much of what you know? It was this scary, like, opening of a passage where my footing wasn't sure, and I had no idea what to do. I remember literally the day after I just realized, I decided it, but I realized it too. I decided I had to leave Christianity to save my life. I woke up the next morning and there was literally a thought I had of, what do I do now? Up until this point in my life, I'd always, if not really believed it, but always sort of felt like, something weird on the road, felt like I was insulated by this, you know, religious system that sort of, you know, kept life on a certain, you know, like, kept it on certain rails that it traveled along. Holy shit, bees in here. Get the fuck out. Get up. So I always had this thing sort of insulated me. So I never thought to concern myself with anything real, never had any real ambitions. Yeah, I always sort of fantasized someday I wanted to do something, and eventually got to a point where I realized I wanted to make movies, and that's the only thing I've wanted ever since then. And at 19, I went through, or really 17 and 18, went through a severe crisis, and kept, thinking I had to be Christian, I had to be devout, throw myself into this, but I never could. I never really believed in it, and the further I got into it, the more cynical I got about it. Just the lies of it, how self-serving it is. People weren't worshiping any God, they were worshiping themselves. And, and it was like worshiping themselves by proxy and saying, oh, it's all really about God. But really it was them enjoying their lives, them believing they've become something righteous, and them thinking like, I found this thing that's really good for me, that I like, that helps me. Well, what's supernatural about that? Is that not a product of our brain? Are there not brain processes going on when that happens, when people get those feelings and are in those environments? So I was steadily becoming disillusioned, and my worldview was darkening. And again, I talked about that in another video, but I'm going to talk about specifically what was it like to reform my views after all that happened. And I was in such excruciating pain and unable to deal with the world around me, and unable to form any kind of connection to anything. I don't even know what would have happened if I kept trying to go down that. It was like a or I don't know what, like pushing up against the wall. The more you push, the more force the wall pushes back. So some religion, Christians, wow, I mean, so perfect. Obviously, God made it for everyone. Why you don't have to go through that in your beliefs? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's your favorite. The fact that this supposedly perfect system that God worked out is perfect for every single person, for some reason it makes millions of people miserable, just as if there was no God. And it is so narcissistic to have such certainty and believe, oh, I have this secret information, and actually it's something you can't get access to, and you just have to believe it from me, which is that this is perfect for you. Oh, and if it doesn't work for you, it makes you miserable. Oh, well, I'll still believe it's perfect for everyone because it's good to me. So it's like you're lying. You're saying I will deny your experience because it suits me. It makes me feel good. That's not worshiping anything but yourself. So just be honest about it. That's at least what Satanists are. They're just honest about it. I've talked about my other problems with Satanists, but when I stopped believing, it was very scary because I was realizing, okay, I'm going to have to form a whole life now. It wasn't like I was just immediately able to walk away from it. I still had huge problems, and I had no idea how to form myself as a person other than with movies. It was excruciating. I felt like every day it was like I was shattered glass, and I was slowly piecing my personality back together to where I could form my own thoughts, to where I wasn't in constant misery, to where I wasn't, so like detached from the world, where nothing mattered, where I held no hope for anything. It took a long time. I mean, it took like a year and a half before I even sort of felt like myself again. And even then I was bitterly depressed, just horribly. Like, I hated everyone. I'd go into a room and just realize I hate everyone here. Everything I saw was so bleak, and it's always like a struggle to not, feel that, and to not have that worldview, because it comes so easily to me. I was so scared that, I was somehow evil, because it really seemed like, well, God had shoved me away. Like, I was so evil, like God couldn't even I couldn't even handle God. So it's like, okay, well, off you go. And I also had those delusions that I was going to be possessed by the devil. Those were terrifying. I didn't change my politics a ton in that time. I was still very conservative, and I almost did it out of fear that I would be evil if I gave up my views on abortion or whatever else, birth control, or being pro-war, all kinds of stuff that I was horribly ignorant on. Like, if you actually learn about this stuff, if you actually see a lot of the facts about it, I don't see how you can keep maintaining a lot of conservative positions. Unless you're just totally callous and ignore people's pain and death, none of it matters to you. I still had this dark drive in me to, see punishment inflicted, and this, ignorance and blind racism that I didn't understand. I even harbored those things. So of course it doesn't feel like bigotry when you're the one engaging in it. It doesn't feel like militarism when you're saying, well, we're the good guys, so of course we should go to war. It doesn't feel like xenophobia when you think, well, other people, around the world, their experiences aren't valid because my experience is more important than theirs. And if I think America's righteous, they should, obey us and concede our demands, or else prepare to be invaded or have their governments conquered or overthrown. Oh my goodness, talking about that, it's still going on. America's doing that. That was a long process, and it took many, many years to change that. My political views, and even it kept evolving throughout my 20s and until now, and it's still evolving. But there's so much I just didn't know, and I still don't know. There's so much history I could learn, all kinds of things. A lot of things, it's like mush in my brain. I can't understand it. A lot of these periods, it made my brain a little less sharp, but that's fine. There's certain things I just can't understand. It's fine. And sometimes it just takes a lot of time to comprehend what people are talking about if it's something outside my experience. I also struggled this whole time to learn how to relate to others and learn how to feel anything good. Because when I was Christian, I was just like, well, feelings don't matter. Nothing matters. And there's always that part of me. But I was like, well, nothing matters. Because, if God's what's important, why would you care about your own feelings? So, I never thought to care for myself at all. Never complained about anything. Now all I do is complain. Never attempted to establish any kind of, friendship really, or relationship with another person. It's very superficial friendships, but none of it mattered. Again, and that's always a problem for me. I don't like, and it's not a problem in a way, it's like, that's just how I am, I guess, but it was made worse when I had this horrible coping mechanism of this illusory system of Christianity, which made me think, well, like, everything's fine. This is just how life is. And as long as I kept to myself, I didn't know how things could change and be out of control. So it's kind of funny. A lot of the lessons in church, like, I felt like they didn't even apply to me, because I'm like, I don't have these kind of problems with others. I don't deal with them. None of it seems to affect me. So, and that already, it's like, if this is such a perfect religion, why is it so confusing? And why is it so backwards for so many people? It made no sense for me, but I had to go through whatever I went through. And so I struggled for a long time. I was deliberately trying to learn how to feel anything good, how to want to be around others. That was a big struggle, because really I didn't want to be for a very long time, and I'm still like that to this day, but at least I learned better how to relate to others, how not to be angry as soon as I walk into a room. I still struggle with that too. But I just also learned certain environments I should be around, certain I shouldn't. Certain environments just make me really uncomfortable. But it was brutal. I went through a lot of therapy, read books, tried to talk to people. It was just excruciating. I was in excruciating pain a lot of the time. I was convinced everybody hated me, absolutely convinced. And it turned out a lot of that was for nothing. Like, I was so convinced people hated me, and it turned out they had no negative feelings toward me at all. But I would be terrified of interacting with them. It really was a long time. I was so paranoid, so sure people wanted to destroy me, and that's always a concern. Like, always when I'm out anywhere, I'm worried about people parking too close to me, or being at the gym, not wanting me to be around them, or especially when they slam weights down and stuff. That makes me like jumpy, like nervous. Like they're just hostile towards people. Like, how can you have so little regard? I mean, you're a bad person if you do that regardless, but how can you have so little regard for other people around you that you know there's people who don't like loud noises and you just do it anyways? By the way, that is going a lot better now that I'm getting up. Basically, like, I've been waking up at 4:30 the last 2 days, but I'll stay lying down till like 5 and then just drive straight to the gym. I gotta sleep closer to the gym. I drive like 7 miles. It's a waste of time. It takes like 20 minutes. And the drive isn't fun. In Virginia, I didn't mind to drive a lot of places. Here, it's just nothing fun about it. The streets are horrible. Anyways, it was just brutal. Learning how to deal with people, and it's still a struggle. Like, why should I care about anything? Why should anything matter? Because that's part of that. It's like genetic. It's just embedded in me. Like I'm still always that person that only could live by escaping something that, to me, I was supposed to be in, Christianity, and that I had to leave and upend everything about my own identity. So it wasn't just that, it darkened so many things about me. It was like enlightening, but I was still so unstable emotionally. Like, I was still terrified of accepting things like abortion being okay, or birth control. Again, that was another big thing. I don't know how much I thought about a lot of other issues, but a lot of stuff, social issues, I didn't really think about too much, which, of course, when you don't do that, you're defaulting to the conservative position. So I harbored those, but I don't think I thought about them a ton. Fortunately, that was one thing where I didn't have strong personal feelings against that. Like, you know, they teach against homosexuality in Christianity. I thought, yeah, I'm supposed to be against it because, like, that's the law. Those are the rules. But I didn't have any personal, like, issue with that. I just thought, well, you're supposed to, you know, it's almost like I did it to look good for the teachers or something. You know, how sickening is that? That you would teach kids to uphold something they can't even understand. It's funny, as soon as I would be challenged on it, on what my views on homosexuality, I could not back them up one fucking bit. I literally said, like, well, I think God made marriage between a man and woman, that's it. And the person kind of laughed it off. And after that, I just learned to stop talking about it, because I cannot say anything in defense of my views on that. And thank goodness I learned to, you know, get out of that. So stupid. What a waste of energy. And I was so ignorant, just knew so little. And once I was an adult and started being around different people and being around gay people, I'm like, how stupid was I? Not that I put a ton of energy into it, just like how ridiculous was that whole teaching? Like, did they really expect us not to go out in real life and actually meet other people from different backgrounds? Or imagine if you were a gay student in school and learning that stuff and having to hide your identity. Anyway, but that was scary for me, just adjusting my views to all that stuff over time. It was scary because I still always had this latent conservatism for a long time. I was, you know, just naturally assumed I was evil unless I could uphold these things that made me righteous, which I've since learned there is no such thing, you know. Really tough. Just a lot of time. That was a big thing that could you know, help me adjust my worldview. But I was still paranoid for many years, still, you know, just didn't want to deal with anyone, even up through my 20s and into my 30s. And it's always a struggle. I always have to sort of practice to make myself want to deal with people. And I do practice it a lot. And you never know it now in a way, but I am like that. I like keep things to myself in a way. I just got to. I don't know, certain things I don't like doing. I don't like going out, just hanging out for fun. I don't like big celebrations. I don't like celebrating my, you know, birthday or anything. Nothing like that. I will never do that. So yeah, a lot of things still don't understand, but I'm glad for that. You know, I don't care. You'll see in my movies. That's the only way I can express those thoughts, those conversations in films, I guess. So yeah, a lot of therapy, a lot of reading books, and then a lot of struggling learning stuff like self-help. I had to learn Jordan Belfort's Straight Line Persuasion. That helped me a ton. Now I see he's gotten, oh man, now I cannot support the guy. Now he's the embodiment of basically white male entitlement. He always was. That's the thing. Don't get me wrong. He always was. But he does have a great sales system. But it was only getting older and learning and seeing how successful he is again. I'm like, oh, I can't support this. And he talks a lot of racism, and but it's the conservative stuff. It's not like, oh, explicitly, you know, white supremacist. It's the stuff about, oh, I think his concern about Trump is a lot of nonsense, and he was only talking about immigrants when he slandered Mexicans and all that stuff. Anyways, I can't even get into that, 'cause I'm not eloquent enough to state my views well on that, except I don't watch his stuff anymore. But I did learn a lot of great stuff about how to set goals for yourself. I was truly miserable, not knowing how to really talk to people, how to interact. And the sales stuff did help me a ton, as well as, you know, Viktor Frankl and other people. And I was just in such despair, just keeping to myself most of the time, not understanding, why don't I care about anything? Why do I feel like I'm just cast off? I'm just forgotten. And the other thing, what was the other thing? Damn it, I was going to say something. So there's politics, personal stuff, oh, and religion. So even with religion, there was this fear that, you know, I was a bad person for not upholding Christianity. And so I sort of like to go to the defense of it, even just because I feared I was evil if I didn't, even though I'm like, oh, I can't be a Christian, but I sort of, you know, will defend it. And it was only with more years that I, you know, felt more strongly about, you know, the scientific reasons why Christianity is just nonsense. It's so laughably false. Every religion is equally false. And this one, it's just that it held such sway over me. I was so scared. Like, the school had built up in my mind that this makes you a good person, that I was still scared that, oh, I have no life, no identity without it. And it took more years of learning, studying, listening to really take it in. I could watch a lot of, you know, sort of anti-religious programs, stuff that explains evolution, how we came up with creation myths and all that stuff, but it didn't sink in, it didn't connect and register in my head. And I still had these horrible doubts, like, oh, but like is Christianity real? And yet at the same time, if I were to ever flip that over and say, okay, well, I want to adhere to it, I could not. I am physically incapable or mentally incapable. I just could not do it, and I wouldn't want to anyways. It's horrible. It's like putting yourself under a totalitarian system. Just heinous. And it's only been in the last few years where I really come at ease with that, where I didn't feel such despair that I didn't have that in my life, and where I could look at it sort of with perspective for what it is. Even though I do have delusions still, I'm feeling them even now in a way. It's scary. And I still get moments of like these weird dreamlike states and hallucinations, and where it's hurtful and I feel numb. And I am taking a course now for that, for depersonalization, derealization. Hope that works. But it's only now I can see from the outside what someone who, almost in a way like what someone who wasn't raised in Christianity would think of it. To where now I can see stuff I didn't understand about why people disliked Christianity so much. And see, that's like what I was saying. In my early 20s, I would still come to its defense in a way like, oh, people hate it too much. Now I can see more why people do, because I didn't realize how condescending and narcissistic it is for someone to think, I have this perfect thing and you need saving. You're actually wrong. Your life is wrong. You're a wretch, and I will help you be saved from this thing. You need this from me. Just how condescending and disgusting that mentality is, and how it's so human. There's nothing supernatural about it. No evidence for it. The evidence against it is overwhelming, and there's so many holes in it. It's so obviously made by people. If you were to come up with a religion that people made, this is what it would look like, among many others. You know, why is it that even people who believe in Christianity, they have so many different beliefs? Why would God even allow for that error? Why not just fix it? Well, of course, there was never any possibility of that happening in the first place when it was all man-made. You look at the Bible, you think, oh, yeah, this is a book written by God. No, it's obviously written by people. We have plenty of books. We know they're all written by people. This one, no less so, and no less flawed than any other, and with a great number of flaws, and ignorant sayings, and ignorant histories, and genealogies, the genealogy of all human life going back to the first two people. Yeah, right. That took a long time too. And it's only been the last few years where I sort of felt like I have some perspective on that again, like I was saying before, to where I can see it without feeling that trauma and loss of having been in it, and, you know, having it there is just providing some feeling of safety in a way, though I could never really adhere to it. And I think it's a horrific, heinous system that's endless. It's like, it's like hallucinating and being in a featureless environment where you constantly try and move, but you're never going forward. Because no matter what you're doing, why aren't you with God? You're not with God. You should be closer to God. That's the horrible mental illness, the compulsion I was feeling. And Christians who don't feel that, hey, you're worshiping yourselves. You're not really losing your life for God, as your religion commands you should. You're living for yourself. And so, in some of my darkest times, the bleakest moments, it felt like, this is the phrase I wanted to get out, I was thinking I had no identity. There was no language, no future, no self. I literally felt like my mind, something was physically wrong, and my brain needed something cut out that was making me feel split in half when I was feeling these horribly painful hallucinations that God was ripping me out of my body, but yet I was still stuck in my body. And over the year, it's endless. It never stops, and there's certain things, you know, it's just never I'll be able to explain. But ultimately, I'm glad I did it. It always feels like I'm starting over, in a way. I mean, to lose so much of your life to that nonsense and have to reform yourself and piece yourself back together, and then have to do it again and again each time I got sick. You know, for 18 months the first time, at 17 to 18. Which, by the way, if people say, well, you just followed the wrong God, I think you followed the wrong version of God, not a biblical one. Why don't everyone else who is in those same religions, the Catholic Church, Greek Orthodox Church, why don't they have that problem that I did too? So you're so sure in your beliefs that there's no possibility you could be wrong. It's just, oh, actually, Angelo, I'm going to deny your experience. I actually think you experienced something else. Even though I wasn't there, I did not see a single moment of it. I have no idea what you were doing. But I think as opposed to everyone else who doesn't have this issue, it couldn't be mental illness. It's just you went for the wrong guy. So is that stupid? I was always just looking for what? A hateful God or something? People make no sense, but that's what Christians are. Christians are liars. They're hypocrites. They cannot tell the truth. They're compulsive liars because they have to maintain their beliefs to make sense of everything they do. They can't just admit, well, yeah, I could very well be wrong. This could be nonsense. No, that right there is, that's gravely sinful. That's a horrible thing to say. No Christian could say that who has Jesus. It was a horribly bleak thing. Just the bleakest, most featureless landscape. And not only I was angry going into rooms with people, I was angry being by myself. I was angry thinking about, life is nothing. And, just furious at life. Furious at being alive. Feeling like I'm going to die. And it's going to be just like a meaningless, senseless thing. Almost just charging towards death. Just waiting for it. You could almost say a perfect religion wouldn't do that. And so maybe it's not perfect. But no, we can't doubt anything. Can't doubt. Mustn't doubt. Must not doubt. It was brutal. That's all I can say. And I still experience, a lot filtered through all that. I just have a lot better coping tools. But it was the bleakest, most featureless landscape where am I most depressed? Sometimes I would wake up. I was convinced I was going to die. I was convinced I was cursed. I am going to die. We're all going to die. But I was convinced, like, I might die soon, and I would wake up seeing black and thinking the world was ending. I was just so distraught and so miserable, and I had no clue how to connect to another person. The only thing that kept me going through a lot of it was movies. And what movies mean to me has changed over the years, but that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I'm so glad I have them. Obviously, without that, I mean, I don't know what else I would be doing. Maybe if I was around 200 years ago, I don't know, I'd been into art or books or something, or storytelling. I like all that stuff too, as it is, but movies are like the ultimate to me. And so why, again, if there's a God who made everyone, it's not that anyone's an accident, oh no, you were made for God, then why would someone be, made in the sort of shape that I am, or other people, who clearly cannot believe, would not want to, and Christianity would be terrible. For that, you wouldn't want to make them believe it. Brutal system. Great, I got lotion on my sunglasses. The word that keeps coming to mind is bleak. Just thinking there's nothing, no future, nothing to want, no ambition, nothing to strive for. Just everything was in chaos. Like every day was just like a chaotic roller coaster ride. Just feeling horrible. The littlest thing would send my mood reeling. So much of my life has been occupied with that. I don't even know what life is without it. Because before that, I didn't even have a life. I was just, just quietly going about my day by myself, not really caring about anything, thinking something about the world is evil. I always thought that from when I was a kid. Like, how can I understand certain things are so wrong, and yet I'm still here sort of living amidst it? Just somehow I thought just life is evil, and you pretend to be good in a way. Not that I had any seriously bad impulses, but that you just pretend that it's worth living. And I like that about movies, that in movies you celebrate that. You don't shy away from it, you don't hide it. You actually confront people with it. And in a way, it's the only way to have that conversation. Language is limited. We can't express everything with words. They're just symbols. And with movies, you can actually express it's its own language, and you can have your own conversation watching it within yourself. So anyways, that's what it was like to lose everything I believed in, which is to say, it was a bleak process, and it's never ending.